Welcome, everybody, to the show. This is Counter Clipping show number 152 for November 11th, 2023. So I'd like to thank everybody for coming out tonight. Let's get the ticker up. And before we get started, let's remember to thumbs up the video and to subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed on the unhappy mischance. About a third of the people who watch this stuff are not subscribed, and I assume in a lot of cases that's just because they're like not actually like signed into YouTube, so YouTube's just going off what the cookies are telling it. The ticker is up, and there is a refreshed link to the Ardwulf Discord community in it. So if you're not in there, it is in the ticker, and it's good for a week. I set these things up so they're good for a week, and sometimes I forget to change it out before each show, but we did not forget to do that today. So also remind everybody that super chats and super stickers are on. That is a great way to get your comment highlighted. I cannot promise that I will get to it instantly, but I will get to it sooner or later if you throw in a super chat or super sticker. It helps to support the channel, and it helps your comment or question or whatever it is not get missed. If you'd like to do more to help support the channel, there are links to do that in the video description, including the Patreon. I'd like to welcome new patrons Jerry Snitzelar, who's joined us at the swordsman level this week, as well as Chris O at the warrior level and Christopher Smith at the veteran level. So thanks very much for that support. Again, it is much appreciated. So before we get started any further here, let's say hello to Alistair Logie, Bill Simone, Bob Kowalczyk, Brent McCabe, Brian Jarvis, glad you could make it, Chad Kennedy, Charles Latorra, Krusty Captain, Daniel McCord, David Imperato, Ed Holtzman, Egrut, Eric Goebel, Half-Ass Gaming, John, thanks for coming, HUN644 New, the legend himself, Fucko is here, Jeff Anderson, Jeff Beeler, Jeffrey Edwards, Joe Faust from sunny Northeast Ohio. It is not super duper sunny today. Joe Okabayashi, Joe Perez, John Longshore is in the house. John, thank you very much for the stuff. Merry Christmas. John C. from the sunny Philippines. John Clark, Jonathan Dyer, Kyle Harris, Lee Grant, Manders, Mark G., Mark McNair, Mark Hodgkinson, Marty Sample, Mason Duke, Meandering Mike, Michael Schmaus, Michael Simon, Nordic Maelstrom, Paul Sin, Ray Musselman, Richard D. Fortuna, Rob Johnson, Rob Moffat, Stacking Limit, thanks for coming. Stephen Parker, Stigler is here. Stuka Joe, always great to see you, Joe. Thanks for stopping by. The Command Tent, Tim Greenhaw, Tim Zales, Wade Moore, William Bird, and Wolf Dog. And I know there were some more folks. And if you haven't commented in like 5 minutes, then your name gets rolled off the list. I'm just putting up the socials, which I almost never actually remember to do. So let's do that. I'm supposed to do that during the 5-minute load screen. We are clipping Osmanli Harbi, the Ottoman front. This is the Der Weltkrieg game on World War I in the Middle East. We're most of the way through it. We got to do the British, which I think are the largest single number of counters we have in the whole thing. And we are drinking Basil Hayden's. I feel like this is Eric became a patron. Thank you very much. That is the first time that has actually happened during the show. So thank you, Eric, for testing that technology for me too. So Basil Hayden's, it's bottled at 40%. It's not priced like it's bottled at 40%. And while it's not horrific, I think it's overpriced for what it is. So we are going to be making a sustained effort. And by sustained, I mean at my usual pace of about that much a week to get rid of it so we can free up space for scotch, for example. So what else do we have going on? There are 132 people here already. That is a long time ago. No, I had clipped this on the show, but I didn't finish it, and it's been sitting here. Other things kind of came up. Other clipping jobs kind of came up and got in the way. Axis Empires got in the way. I started working on Death Valley. That got in the way. Crimea got in the Crimea's done, by the way. So anyway, let's see here. Alistair Logie opened up his pre-punched copy of La Bataille de Ligny with the intention of sorting the counters and close the box again. So when it's time to sort the counters, use the setup cards. I assume you're talking about the more recent edition of Ligny. Use the setup cards. That's how you sort the counters. You sort them you're sorting them by formation, but you do that on the setup cards. And the setup cards will tell you how to organize everything. That is the trick that I found after a couple of times. Vicky, Neil Bedke, Mitchell Meyer, thanks for stopping by. Fast Hines, I think I caught everybody else. I apologize to anybody that I have missed in the shout outs at the beginning. So, what's going on? Okay, we have. I guess I'll talk about me, and then there'll be some very light news, which only one of which is news. The other of which is just a statement that there is no news. Um, so what's on the table? We are playing, as mentioned, Napoleon's Last Gamble on Wednesday nights, and unfortunately, due to a home scheduling problem, I'm not going to make it this week, and I am not positive of my ability to make it for the next couple of weeks, at least going through into the Christmas holiday. So we may be just flatly borked on that. We'll get back down there as soon as possible, but I don't know precisely when that is going to be at this time. There is a blog post up on the blog that is about the conventions that are maybe that I'm maybe going to in 2024, and that I definitely intend to go to in 2024. So check that out. There's a link to the I think there's a link to the blog in the video description. I think it's been so long since there's been a blog post that I forgot whether it's in there or not. So Jeff Anderson, yes, I don't believe this doesn't bother me because I am super duper OCD. Yeah, but yeah, this does bug me actually. I'd rather have it clipped or not clipped and organized. It's always clipped and organized, right? If I'm just like throwing them in a bag. ArtyCon is on the list. That is the if it happens, the target date will. So the definite conventions are Winterfest in February, Buckeye Game Fest in late April, early May, and Origins in June. And the target for ArtyCon is September, October. So that is, I started with the blog, Chad Canady. So, oops. Yeah, I almost actually fell into this too. Lee Grant, thanks so much. The support is much appreciated. Lee apparently ordered 2 copies of Crimea. Worst case, Lee, just like sit on it for a year and then it'll be out of print and then you'll be able to get twice that for it. So, ooh, this is a good call. Yeah, so this is true. So there's 2 Labatai websites. There's labatai.me, which is Marshall Enterprises, and labatai.us, which I think is at least more associated with the Clash of Arms sequences of games. And there's a great deal of support material for all of that stuff on all the Labatai games, that is, on those websites. So you should, if you're doing Labatai, you should definitely check those out. I had an offer came through on an eBay auction of Jackson and Corinth, and an offer came through. And by the time, I probably wasn't going to say yes to it anyway because it's still going to be like $80. But by the time I got to it, somebody had snatched up the offer. So, and you know what? If you haven't yet, I mean, not to FOMO everybody here, but I mean, third winter doesn't have many copies left over at MMP either. So let me mention the RPG thing that I am planning to do. Now, the actual start date for this is probably looking like January, but I do know some more things than I knew last time I talked about it. So I will be running an RPG type event. The targeted time is Friday evenings, probably from 9 to midnight. So bear that in mind. And that is just a slot that happens to work for me. The game, it is going to run for something like 4 to 6 sessions, something like that. The game is going to be RuneQuest, role-playing in Glorantha, which is the new edition of RuneQuest. I feel like if I run it for 3 to 6 sessions, I will get it out of my system and then be ready to move on to something else, which will probably be another short game of Call of Cthulhu. Probably in the same time slot, but we'll see. By the time that ends up, we're probably looking like April. So because it's probably ever going to be every other week is my guess. So after that, we're going to probably do a short Call of Cthulhu as we continue to work on a Traveler thing that will be a more open-ended campaign. Now, I will mention that there will be like an actual slots are open announcement that will end up getting made probably before the end of 2023. I will mention that Ardwulf Lair patrons will get dibs on those spots if they want them, but and where a tiebreaker might be necessary, we might have to go by their Patreon level. Um, but that is the plan on that. What else did I have? 3D printer's still down. I think the problem is that I need a hot end replacement. And it's, well, not an enormous engineering task. It's more than I have felt like doing in the last several days. So I haven't gotten to it yet. I have the part. I just need the time and mental focus to do it. John over at Half-Ass Gaming is setting up Ericore. That is the ideal learning platform for BCS. I do highly recommend, if you have not already, watching Doug's playthrough of last Blitzkrieg using the current rules over on the Tabletop's Edge. I can't recommend that series highly enough. And in fact, the whole channel, but that's what you said. So, all right. Yeah, I mean, I feel like we're doing the campaign. We set up the campaign, and then the news came down that I had no car available for the week. So that screwed things up. What else do we got? I guess before I get into new arrivals, I'll mention that I don't like to take up airtime on the show with this stuff, but I will say that anybody who is patiently waiting for a Charles S. Roberts Award announcement, there will be a Charles S. Roberts Award announcement pretty soon. Not this is Winterson. It's going to be the new edition, what I call somewhat spitefully RuneQuest Second Edition. Which is actually titled RuneQuest Role Playing in Glorantha. The starter set is amazing, and contains much of the material you'd want. But I guess I'll mention that the adventure that I'm going to start with is one of the ones out of the starter set. So if you have the starter set, don't read that. So Daniel O'Rourke, thanks for stopping by. So yeah, the new edition of Delta Green Tom MC is pretty nice too. So new arrivals. The big new arrival was this. I actually did a TikTok about this today. This is Napoleon's Last Battles Designers Edition, which means the map is mounted. Interesting. We don't have no car. I just have no car available this week. But interestingly, I figured the map was mounted, but it didn't occur to me that, hey, it's a double-sized map. So about this much of the interior of this box is filled with mounted map. It's unpunched. It's got a decent amount of shelfware, but is otherwise in very nice condition, and I'm very happy with it. This came from eBay for a price of $50, which I considered pretty good. Winterson, this is a long-term goal of mine. Probably use Mythros rather than RuneQuest as such. Although I'd also be tempted to run RuneQuest, do that in RuneQuest 3. But RuneQuest in Harn, I think, is a super duper natural fit. Don Wenard, thanks for stopping by. Maybe we'll see you when you get back. Also picked up, these came from Noble Knight for RuneQuest 3rd edition, The Land of Ninja, which is what it sounds like. It's feudal Japan for RuneQuest. RuneQuest is very good at handling historical or historically flavored stuff, at least. This is not what I would run, but I didn't have it, and the price was decent, so I picked it up. And then this Glorantha Genertella Crucible of the Hero Wars. This kind of a one-of-a-kind product. This kind of gives you much of the entire world in terms of mechanical stuff you need for character creation. So I really rather wanted it, since the new edition gives you a much, much less open subset of material for that. So I don't think we're going to cover any more RPG stuff here tonight. There will be news when there is news. Yeah, so that's two 24 by or 22 by 34 inch maps, right? So it's big. It might be the first game that occurred in the wargaming space, at least, with a double mounted map. Didn't even occur to me. I didn't even think of it. So I am very happy with the price. I have Chad Kennedy. What was it? Be curious to know what it was. Some of the boxes are big. Some of the boxes are super duper small. Soapbox. Very good. Yeah, I remember now. Soapbox of the Next War. Yep, 4-inch box, big box, big box. Oh, poop! I forgot to mention this because it didn't make the notes when I was putting the notes together for the show. The SD HistCon, however it works over at SD HistCon, has announced the winner of their annual Summit Award, which has been won. And I'm not going to look into that. Go to sdhist.com or whatever the website is. And they will explain better than I can what the award is actually for. It has been awarded to Tori Brown's Votes for Women, which is a really nice production. I'm very impressed with it. The other nominees are all interesting games in their own right. So, yeah, so I mean, it's always nice when you get get the thing home and the box is not totally flattened, right? Always disappointing when it is. So, and a lot of the third edition RuneQuest stuff that I have picked up has come through Noble Knight too, frankly, because they have like, I mean, if they don't have everything, but they have as close to everything as anybody has. So, as I mentioned. So anyway, Shogun on streaming. I've actually I saw that, but I mean, I was like 12 when that came out, and I didn't really get it. So Ardennes 44 kickoff on the 16th. That sounds like a fantastic idea. I am not going to have any kind of bulge thing going on at this time. Traveler Tuesday, Bob Kowalczyk. Thanks so much for the support. That is much appreciated. Traveler Tuesday will return when I have actually, it can return. The real reason, A, the time, and B, I haven't really bought anything new to do like a flip through of. So that may be changing in the next week or so, depending on when something Mongoose is shipping me arrives. It was a thing that I was the volume 2 of the JTOS slipcase thing. And I just never got it. So I'm like, and it fulfilled in like January. So I'm like, oh boy, I better get on this. But I think they're shipping it to me from England, actually. So I don't know when that's going to show up. There may be a video at that time. There will definitely be Traveler Tuesday stuff when the Traveler, like I have Traveler material. The thing I am working on will require substantial preparatory work, and I will be giving a glimpse into that preparatory work. Let me put it that way. All right. Andrew Adkin watched Alatrista, I don't know, for free on YouTube. Yeah, I mean, I that may actually have been done. Not even sure. Eric from Eric's Table Napoleonic Battles. Thanks for stopping by. Mine are not. I mean, these are not perfectly mounted maps. Okay, they're a little bit loose, but they're nice. And they're everything's in great shape. And like I said, it's unpunched, so I can't really complain. Burning Wheel. I didn't really want to spend time on RPG stuff tonight, but I guess I can't not tell the story if this particular thing comes up. So we were in a Burning Wheel game with the designer Luke Crane, who's subsequently turned out to be kind of a jackwad. But you know, it was an interesting game, and it was one of those things where I really kind of wanted to see how it worked. So that was the motivation for playing with the designer. And while this was at an Origins, quite a while ago, and while the game was in session, the Origins Awards were also happening, and Burning Empires, which had released that year, designed by Luke, was the winner of some award or other, and a giant pageant rolled into the room that we were playing in to give him the award when that came out. So it's been it's a story that has acquired a substantial amount of mystique. Whenever Burning Empires and or Origins Awards and or Luke Crane comes up, that this story tends to get told by other people. I was in the game, so it's kind of cool. Anyway, all right. So the topic tonight is what criteria do we use to decide that we're going to buy a war game or not? Right. You can extend the same logic to whether we decide we're going to play a war game or not. And I think some of the things that lead us to that decision are obvious, and some things maybe aren't. And we'll kind of talk through that. Maybe there are deeper reasons behind just I really like Gettysburg, right? So London, Kentucky. I have no idea where that is. So, but thanks for stopping by, Kai Sharp. So anyway, Burning Empires is based on There's actually a war game connection to that. Burning Empires is a graphic novel series by Christopher Moeller, whose name you might recognize as the artist behind Burning Banners, the voice behind the Thursday Night Gamers YouTube channel, the artistic design behind the recent generation of game boxes from OSG. So Chris Moeller is a big time wargaming person, and the graphic novels are really good. Actually, it's like it kind of feels like 40K before 40K was very 40K. You know what I'm saying? So So, one of the things that leads me to say, okay, yes, I'm going to buy this game is it in a rule series that I have decided is going to be one of my like main focus rule sets, right? Um, those games include like must buy games include like GCACW, GBACW. Happy to buy any line of battle games that happen to come out if we ever see one again. OCS, obviously, Goss. I'll buy whatever they want to do with. Well, up to this point, I bought whatever they wanted to do for Goss. If they do get to the North Africa stuff, I'm really going to be substantially less interested in that. So, Palmer Eldridge, thanks for stopping by. So, obviously, another reason why, other than membership in a series, right? I didn't list all the games I'm buying. I'm also buying Labatai, but I'm content to buy whatever's new rather than trying to run down expensive out of print stuff of, where we don't really know what the print quality is going to be, right? So considering that it's a series that's been around since the 70s, I'm happy to just buy the newer stuff. That's perfectly okay. GTS is another series I'm buying. Other examples, the East Front series, the Vance von Boris East Front series, Library of Napoleonic Battles thus far. So Mark Hodgkinson, yeah, I mean, I'm happy on all these. Now, another obvious reason, right? A game that is about a topic that we're interested in, right? This is the most obvious thing to me. Is like, well, you're going to buy this Gettysburg game because you're super into Gettysburg, or the Bulge, or Tobruk, or whatever it is. Maybe you don't buy all of those games, but maybe you just really feel compelled to get and to see everything that's out on Gettysburg, for example. And I feel like of topics, I feel like Gettysburg's kind of the most susceptible to that because we really do see like a couple of Gettysburg games a year. Gettysburgs is apparently how we pronounce it in Ohio, by the way. I feel like we get a couple of Gettysburg games a year, so you can really buy a Gettysburg game a year if you wanted to, and kind of keep the flow going in there. And if you were like a really serious student of the battle, I can totally see why you would want to do that. But I mean, at the same time, another example might be World War II East Front, right? You cannot. I mean, no normal person can buy all the East Front games that come out in any given year because there's too many of them, right? It's an example of a topic in which everyone is probably a little bit choosy. They might be able to be a little less choosy just based on volume. If it's something like Gettysburg or the Bulge, where maybe we don't see quite as much. Um, Another fact, none of this is to say that there's only one reason why anybody buys a game, right? That's obviously probably not true. In many cases, it's going to be a confluence of these factors. You like the topic, you like the system, maybe you like the publisher or the designer. It's pretty hard to keep up with publishers as well, unless maybe that publisher is like New England Simulations, where they only do a game every couple of years, which is the news item that Marty Sample might already have spread. And this isn't secret because it was on Console World, so I can say it. It's looking like January for delivery of Winter's Victory. It is not going to be back from the printer before the end of the year. So just FYI on that. Chad Kennedy, thank you so much. Much appreciated. Chad says the reason he buys a game is the period of interest, the game designer, and mentioned by me. So I guess thanks. I don't mean to spend anybody's money, but if everybody just likes the games that I like, that's great for me, right? Now, Tom FC mentions novel systems, and I do actually think that this is a reason. A game I picked up because I really wanted to kind of see what it was doing was Atlantic Chase, right, by Jeremy White, who I will mention. Dan and I will have on the show on this Thursday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. So tune in on that. I'm sure Atlantic Chase will be discussed. And he also has Pacific Chase en route as well. But no, I absolutely have bought stuff due to a desire to investigate the mechanic. You can't see it because it's on the shelf above this stuff. But an acquisition, if you watch the Compass Games Expo loot video, an acquisition there from the flea market was Lee versus Grant. I wanted to see that because it's an ancestor and same designer too, Joe Balkowski, of the Great Campaigns of the American Civil War series. And looking at it, it's a very close ancestor at that. It is really close. Oh, very good. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Seth is great. He's must if you're going to do like RPG, like watch RPG YouTube videos, and they're not like live play videos, in which case I can tell you, well, I actually can tell you something. There we go. This bag will do. Um, I I'm subscribed to several RPG channels. Seth is one that I just watch everything he does. Greyhawk Grognard is another one. Greyhawk Grognard is very, very narrowly focused around D&D, but a lot of the things he talks about can be applied to other games. Seth does stuff that can be applied to other games, but largely talks about stuff that's not D&D. And since my interest in D&D these days, other than for archival purposes, is very limited, I really appreciate what Seth is doing. So and he has excellent production values. His videos are funny, highly, highly, highly watchable. Now, I'll also mention Jeremy White on Thursdays got belled. That is correct. I don't know whether he prefers to be called Jeremy or Jerry, but I'm sure we'll end up using both. I found that confusing, to be honest. I thought there were two different people at one point. So excellent, excellent, excellent. Yeah, you'll see more Traveler stuff from me. There's no doubt about that. It's just a matter of exactly when. Um, yeah. So I have a number of the Gettysburg things I have are thanks to Gilbert. So Gilbert has spent some of my money. So I do sympathize with this. And that's and so has Stuka Joe. I will point out, I really, 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 really wanted Napoleon against Europe because Stuka Joe did some video on it, and I finally got it after it took a couple years to get it, but I finally did get it, and I still haven't played it. So, Adam Misnick, thanks for stopping by. Besides, topic has a preference for games that use a system that he's familiar with. Find learning new systems as he gets older more of a chore. I think this is totally understandable too, and that's kind of one reason why there's people that like don't like series games. I am not one of those people. I like series games. I like the extra ease of not necessarily having to to I'm just making sure I got to all the super chats here. Um, the extra ease of learning where I don't have to learn this system from scratch, right? So, and Patrick's Tactics and Tutorials has probably sold a few copies of GCACW games, I would think. Manders mentions novelty. This is actually true too. I mean, I feel like this is really where magazine games tend to shine, right? In that magazine games tend to be small, they tend to be not horrendously expensive, and or folios, I suppose, and they tend to be a little braver in terms of, not covering the same old topics that we've seen 75 million times. I also am not crazy about the map in this Stigler, but I didn't hate it to the extent that I did with some other games that use a somewhat similar art style. This game system actually looks fairly neat. And if I was in the market for tactical Vietnam, I'd probably jump on this, but I am not. So Mark Hodgkinson apparently listens to me for some reason. I don't know why. Kyle Harris, series games give a good method for examining a topic in a slightly different light. Blind Swords and Gettysburg, for example. So I'll actually agree with this too. The one of the things that I had back in the early, the days of yore was Cedar Mountain, the GBACW game out of S&T, and it's one of those things that went away. If you had ever heard me say up to such and such a point, I didn't even own any Civil War games, and I think I did say that at one point. That was incorrect. I had a few Civil War games. The Cedar Mountain from S&T was one of them. So I got rid of it unplayed, but then years later, I started getting into Civil War and picked up the GBACW Twin Peaks, which has Cedar Mountain in it. And after that, I'm like, this is actually a fairly interesting battle, and I can get a copy of Cedar Mountain from S&T for $15 maybe. So I actually picked up that just so I could actually see the battle in the two different iterations of the system. There's really more than two different iterations of GBACW, by the way. It's kind of the original out of Terrible Swift Sword, and then some changes happened, and then it became a series, and then that changed some more things, and then SPI went away, and Richard Berg had it on his own for a while, through which it was published through at least two and maybe three or four different publishers, and before landing at GMT, where the system has been relatively stable. All right. Well, I'm not coming at it from this perspective, John, but I sympathize. All right. Nordic Maelstrom asks if I have gotten Gallipoli 1915 from GMT on the table yet. No. I think the smart money is to actually wait for Mons, which has moved over to Compass. And then once you have Mons, which should have a significantly streamlined system, use that system for Gallipoli as well. But I do have Gallipoli. I'm kind of waiting for Mons. We did an interview a while back with Jeffrey Phipps, the designer, back when it was still on GMT's P500, and then GMT didn't. I don't know. The decision was made to pull it from there, and it found a new home at Compass like inside of a week. So it looks super promising, and I'm very much interested in seeing it. Jeff Mueller says art style is one reason he doesn't buy a lot of against the odds games. GDW's look got him to buy many of their games. Same with GMT and MMP. So generally, physical eyeball appeal of a game, I think, is a factor, right? If a game is really exceptionally gorgeous, I think, or the components are really nice in some other ways. Also, see New England Simulations. I think that is a motivation to maybe buy something that you might not otherwise buy. That may have been the reason why I picked up Jaws of Victory, to be completely honest about it. Because it's just so damn nice. And it happens to also be a very good looking game on the Cherkasy Pocket as well. So I don't, I think against the odds, some of their stuff looks really good. Some of their stuff I'm not as crazy about. I don't know that I've seen anything that I thought was really horrific. I do like the sort of what became for a long time sort of the wargaming default look, which I would characterize as different levels of Mark Simonich and Roger McGowan, sort of that GMT look. MMP does not have a house style, right? There's a gamer's house style, and there's an ASL house style. But otherwise it's just depends on what it is, right? I mean, there's a GCACW style and a GTS style. So there's no real MMP house style, but generally speaking, I have been very happy with just the looks of stuff from MMP, generally speaking. Verdun Steel, Steel Inferno. I think this is the game I'm thinking of. There's been some playthrough on this, and it's supposed to be a very good game. There we go. Stuka Joe has a video on Front Towards Enemy. Eric Hansen mentions John Company Second Edition, which I guess is a very different game than John Company First Edition. I would like to play this. It is apparently fairly complicated by the standards of games of its type. So it's kind of tactical or grand tactical. That's actually what interested me in it. And it's something that, I mean, it bogs, obviously that situation bogs down fairly quickly, but the game only covers like the first couple of days, as I recall. So John C says that Stuka Joe's video on A Most Fearful Sacrifice made him pull the trigger. I can think of, over the last, say, 5 years, I can think of few easier triggers to have pulled. We lost a nut. The nut came off my counter clipper. It'll be fine. Just an exceptionally gorgeous and well produced game. I don't have enough good things to say about it. Marty apparently doesn't like against the odds graphics either. I've got, I don't know. I've got probably 10 against the odds games. That's a total guess. They do definitely have like a distinct counter style that shows up in a lot of their games. It doesn't bother me. It's not my favorite. I don't know that I think I have not, to the best of my recollection, said pass based on graphics of an ATO game. Let me put it that way. Yeah, and you can actually get a glimpse of this in the updated documents that are available on the Gallipoli page on BGG if you want. So you could do it now, but I'm just, I got other stuff, so I'm gonna just wait for mods. This is supposed to be very good. That's about all I know about it. We have mentioned it on the show before. We're trying to get to the front of the chat here. Ooh, is this the one with the really horrific map too? Because one of those ATO games, now that Vince re-mentions, I don't know if it was this one or not, has a just map that's just like this giant gray mass. And I maybe it's better in person looking at it than it is in pictures on the internet, but ooh, that looks like a tough map to read. All right. Well, fortunately, Nordic Maelstrom, you're going to have a fresh update of this pretty soon through Compass. Last Gamble looks really, really strong. Expect that you'll see some video about it from me. ATO has had some very interesting designers. John Prados did a bunch of stuff, and I mean, one of the reasons I picked up what I did. This was like right before Prados passed away. Actually, I ordered like 3 John Prados games from ATO, and I think that was part of the Labatai de Vauchamp deal. So I didn't like plan that. It just kind of happened that all the magazines I ordered were John Prados issues. So the designer, obviously, as Winterson points out, this has been mentioned already, but I don't know if I said it. Obviously, the designer is a factor, right? If we have, whether that designer is a Mark Herman or a Herman Letman or another Herman of some kind, um, that means a lot, right? If you have a designer you stay away from, right? A lot of people to this day absolutely despise Richard Berg, for example, and just will not do anything that Richard Berg even farted in the same room as. And so the designer's obviously a significant factor, right? I'm going to say that Mark Simonich does something, I'm going to take a very serious look at it. Mark Herman does something, I'm going to take a very serious look at it. I think probably this at this exact moment, and if you ask me in a couple of months, I'm sure I'll say something different. But the designer whose work I am finding has the most of interest to say to me at this time is probably Dean Essig. And that's, in part because I've been picking up extra Dean games for the last, or Dean series at least for the last couple of months, picking up a whole pile of TCS and Civil War Brigade, and I completed the Napoleonic Brigade series. Some of the graphics on those are not great. So, but Dean always is an interesting designer in the sense of having something to say in those games, right? So, all right. Moving through here. Well, if you only got one, I think Beauchamp looks great. But the counters are very much the Marshall Enterprises counters, right? I mean, they're done. I don't know if they were done by the same artist as Marshall Enterprises uses, but they're definitely done in the same style that Marshall Enterprises uses. So yeah, they're super duper attractive. This does not make me want to play it less, Eric Hansen. There's video on it. I could watch some video on it, but um, this is fair. There's a lot of games with thunder in the title. That is totally fair. This is interesting too. Yeah, there's a new edition of Verdun on the Volga coming from Against the Odds. I forget exactly when that's coming, but I think it's probably 2024. Hungarian Nightmare. I mean, offhand. I mean, the maps for Monty's D-Day and Bradley's D-Day, the versions from ATO, I liked those. I haven't really looked at Breaking the Chains, Joe Perez. I feel like Compass doesn't really have much of a house style either. I do feel like some of my early games were very much that L2 influence stuff, and I don't have them anymore, so I can't tell you if Ard Lupinacci was actually the person that did the graphics on them or not. But they definitely had like a distinct look that reminded me a lot of L2, which, and Art did the graphics for, say, Russia Besieged. So there's that. All right, we're trying to catch up, trying to catch up, trying to catch up. Um, Andrew, I assume we're talking still about John Company Second Edition here. Yeah, but this is kind of the point of that game. The point of, I mean, the problem that I heard people have with Puerto Rico, at least inside our space anyway, was that it didn't reflect the history at all. So, and I find that to be a completely reasonable thing to say if to get me to not be interested in that game. Um, I do have this guilty land. I have not. I do, right? I do have this guilty land because there was a couple things from Hollenspiel on that topic, and I haven't had the chance to play it. It is something that is on my list of things to do in my copious free time as usual. So, all right, we are spinning through the thing. Art, is your RPG thing moving closer to making player offers? Yeah, it's moving. I'm still doing research right now, thus the incoming RuneQuest material. But I wouldn't expect that in the week before Christmas. I might. Which is that next week? Jesus Christ. Yeah, that's next week. So pretty soon then, to be honest about it. Don't forget that France 40 is coming like anytime. I don't think it's going to make Christmas, but it should be out very early on. Frank says content creator tutorials and playthroughs raise the odds that they'll purchase the game or skip it. Influencers include Mo. I agree with this entire list. Mo, the Player's Aid, Wise Guy Histories, Duke of Joe, Gilbert Collins, etc. And there are others as well. Just a Guard is one I would add to my personal list of people whose opinions, and even sometimes Callendale, right? That doesn't necessarily mean that I agree with what they had to say about it. Sometimes you watch a review or like a review or a playthrough, and the person didn't really like it, and you say to yourself, "Yeah, I'd like still like that." I mean, that's why when Justigard did a not altogether positive wrap up on End of Empire, I said, "Yeah, I'm going to buy that anyway." So, Wise Guy History is really good. All these folks are really good. So, and I think that's great, right? If if my look at a game as has convinced somebody to save their money, having made a slightly less uninformed decision, I am completely happy with that. It's not my job to sell product to people after all. I mean, if people do that because I think it's good, cool, but that's not my objective. If I can dissuade somebody from buying something that they shouldn't have bought anyway, that's just as good for me. Um, Carrot combat system. This sounds like an Adam Starkweather thing, actually. Um, yeah, I don't know that we're going to get much of an update on these, though. I don't intend to replace my current editions on any of this personally. Steve Dolges has amazing taste in games. Steve and Eyes, and he's another one that I will watch regularly. And we have excellent crossover in terms of game tastes. No, it was Devil Boats, which is, I think, the same designer, but that was, and the reviewer in question was Wayne Hansen. It was a stunt, right? Wayne admitted it, at the end, the subsequent blowback that it had been a stunt. Um, it's not a strong game. It's also the designer's first game, so I felt like maybe some degree of slack was warranted. So there's that, and hopefully lessons were learned and Schnell Boats is better. I actually have not really heard. Generally speaking, I'm unaware of any significant differences in the different editions of Normandy 44 or Ardennes. Ardennes 44 might be a little different because that's had more printings. I will say that Ukraine 43 is substantially different between the first and second editions. All right. Yeah, Marty's, not huge, but incremental in nature. I think it's on its fourth printing nowadays. This is another thing that will get me to buy something potentially, right? If it's a giant value pack. I have bought a number of things from GMT just based on the sheer value that's present in the box, right? The obvious thing, I'm not sure where it is. It's with the GMT stuff. Everything is now shelved by major series. There'll be a video on this eventually. major series or publisher. Um, Battles of the American Revolution is stored with the GMT stuff because I only have that one tri-pack. I will have the second tri-pack when it comes out, and I bought the tri-packs because, frankly, the price was very respectable, and their price, even the regular MSRP, is pretty good for a two-mounted map game with 4 games inside. And even though it's called a tri-pack, there are 4 games inside. So tremendous value, yeah, I'm gonna grab problem. I'd be real tempted to grab that. I mean, that's why I bought the Musket and Pike dual pack too. I have no experience with that series. So Eric's table Napoleonic battles will probably sell you on Labatai too. Zilla Blitz is good too. Zilla covers a lot of stuff that's not really in our space. Um, but but he's a good content creator and he's well worth watching. And Peter Berg's comes back to what I just talked about. High cost for low scenario count, low complexity game is black mark and needs a lot of convincing. Yeah, I mean, sure. If I see a game that promises to be, hey, this is I don't like to use the term beer and pretzels, but part of that's because I don't like to drink in game. So there's that. I'll drink after the game. That's fine. But drinking during the game, no, I'll need a nap, and nobody wants that. So, um, so if something is positioning itself as like this very light, fast, breezy beer and pretzels thing, and then they want $100 for it, I mean, that's not to say that should be too much for you or anybody else, but for me, it's probably gonna turn me off. Patrick's Tactics, you're one of them, Patrick. So shut up. And all the GBOH stuff, right? The recent GBOH stuff, the big pack Alexander, the big pack SPQR, the big pack Julius Caesar, and I think the next thing in the pipeline is going to be a new version of War Galley, which should be very interesting, which will um, presumably bring in all the expansion stuff plus maybe some new stuff. Marty Sample sorts by subject matter and era. And I'll give you an actual number here because I do have a database for this stuff. Ugh. So if we count war games, but not non-war games and not expansions, I have about 530 of those. My not quite complete expansions list says I have 83 expansions, and non-war games I've got about 30. RPGs are not we're not calibrating for RPGs. So I've got a lot of stuff. And I found that sorting by publisher makes more sense because publishers tend to stick with a certain shelf format, right? Now, even GMT has done tiny box games and big flat box games, and let alone MMP has done that, and Decision has done that. But other than Clash of Arms, every publisher over the history of war games has tended to have a couple of different kinds of packaging that they more or less stick to. I favor the bookshelf boxes because I can do what I do right here on them, and it looks nice, and I can find everything and organize it however I want in my incredibly OCD way. Yes, substantially different and better from what I hear. This is one in that series that I don't have. Oh, the British Way is a good example. I didn't jump on this one, but yeah, I mean, I can absolutely see the value proposition in the British Way. I'm not, I like coin. I'm just not the world's biggest coin person. And so I passed on it. Now, what may happen is depending on how the money works out for 2024. What may happen is I may pick up some of the stuff that I missed this year, next year, and I may pick up some of that stuff in the GMT sale, and I may pick up some of that stuff at Origins from Enterprise Games as well. So either of those things could happen. Those tend to happen kind of every year because invariably something came out that I said, damn it, I should have ordered that. This past Origins, it was Under the Southern Cross, which I did not, or did I pre-order that? I actually think I pre-ordered that, but I bought something from Enterprise from GMT that I should have gotten when it came out, and I didn't. Rob Johnson says completionism and FOMO, and if anybody is wondering, that is fear of missing out. Played an OSG Napoleonic game, really liked it, and bought every that Tedley could get his hands on. Just need time to play them. So the good news is that none of those are really, really super complicated. So if the library of Napoleonic battles is what we're talking about, then there's not even much in the way of game specific rules. It's just a lot of little things like, okay, how does the weather work and that kind of thing. So I like okay, so Aaron Armour. This is the new Bruce Maxwell title, a revision of the old Aaron Armour from West End Games by Bruce Maxwell back in the day. Bruce is bringing it back in a substantial revision from Compass. It looks really nice. It was on a table at Compass Expo. This is World War III, NATO versus Warsaw Pact, operational or grand tactical, maybe. And it does look quite nice. Scott Bell mentions seeing and playing games at WBC or other conventions. Mark Miklos taught Great Battles of the American Revolution. There you go. So, and I got the order in on TriPack number 2 as well. So, I'm not super duper interested in American Revolution at the tactical level or grand tactical level or whatever we're calling that. But if I am gonna play it, those look like about the right level of depth. They're not like super shallow, just throwaway games. But they're not Goss either. All right, Cal Harris mentions GCACW, the trend to package to like put modules together. I also really like this. I don't know if we're going to see long rebels in the White House, but you never know if they're going to do the skirmisher on a regular basis. They might as well. Nordic Maelstrom says that Musket and Pike is excellent. Played a few battles in September and October. Banish All Their Fears is coming anytime, and that's by Ben. In fact, it might even be shipping like now. I have been billed for Norman Conquests, but have not yet gotten a shipping notification, nor gotten anything from UPS that says that it's on its way. So let's put that there for the moment, since we have a large quantity of counters to put away. All right. I've done this too. I mean, I did this. I mean, I think the only series, the 2 series where I did kind of go out of my way to buy the old stuff was OCS and bizarrely Europa. And I still missing the one thing, but I've got an arrangement with somebody on Fall of France, which is the only like campaign that they did that I'm missing. I don't have all the games, but I have all the campaigns except for that. My wife is going to be handed an extensive spreadsheet so she can sell them off individually and live for at least a year. I'm very excited about those. This is a criticism that I have seen levied at GBOH in general, in that it is pretty marker heavy, and particularly in those games where you've got phalanxes or double width counters, and then you also have a lot of markers, none of which are that size. That can actually create some issues. I think at this point my cough is almost totally gone. Almost. So, which is good, since it's been like, this is like week 3. I'd really rather it be gone at this point. You know what I'm saying? All right, we're going to finish up the British here. All right, try and catch up while we're talking about it, while we're pulling counters off the sheet here. Nordic Maelstrom's new to GBOH, but managed to get Julius Caesar, SPQR Deluxe, and Great Battles of Alexander. Yeah, I mean, if you've got those 3, man, that's a lot of gaming right there. So if you can get more, terrific, but I would certainly not tell you that you need to kill yourself trying to find the other ones. Frank would rather buy small footprints games more often than big, and is still searching for a solitaire Heart of Gold system. Frank, we should have a conversation about Carrier Battles Philippine Sea that came out from Compass and sold out relatively quickly. I will also point out that is a solo only system. I have no opinion on it other than that it is based on the old carrier system from Victory Games and designer John Southard. Matt Davidson, sourced by publisher as well. So if I got like a series, especially when the series crosses publishers, and a number of series do, say GBAC or GC, well, GBACW does too, actually. Although I put the GBACW is sorted with the publishers, right? That's why these are up here with the SPI stuff. That's all the SPI stuff I've got that's not flats or magazine games, by the way. And you know, it ain't bad. Clark Commander 1983, Mark, thanks for stopping by. 700 is a lot. I've got like I said, I've got over 500 now, and I'm straining. The room is kind of straining at the space. If I ever get to do that shed thing where we have a game room out in the shed and I can store games out there, that'll be a little different. But until then, maybe you don't store the games in the same place as you play the games. That's an interesting idea. We'll talk about that at a different time. Brian Jarvis, I have no position on this whatsoever. We have not started that conversation yet. So, what am I missing? What am I missing? Where? The only or Europa thing I'm missing is Fall of France. So, now I did go out of my way to run down all the OCS titles too, right? And that includes everything, including you know, like DAC 1 and DAC 2, which is dumb. You don't need both of them. But I have both of them. So the Guerrilla Generation is going to be another one of those coin multi-packs. And again, I don't know if Guerrilla Generation is going to be 2 players as well. The games in the British Way, I believe, are all 2 players. Which is interesting, which is something that we haven't seen that much of in the coin zone, right? And it's kind of nice if I feel like the 4-player default that coin had, that started with and had for a long time, just kind of by default, is one of the biggest constraints on that system and its flexibility. I have bought 3 copies of Victory Game Civil War, not US Civil War. I've only bought one of those, but it is really, really good. So we're trying to catch up here, folks. Oh, Chad Kennedy, thanks so much. Much appreciated. Is also drawn to older games that are considered to be influential and groundbreaking, thus The Next War, which I think can be considered both influential and groundbreaking and large, right? And that's actually why I picked up a bunch of the stuff that I've picked up lately, right? Because I'm, you know, kind of, there's some strategic level World War II stuff that I kind of wanted to see, including in particular, I think the Pacific is much less well nailed down than Europe is in this particular space. So I picked up a couple of additional Pacific games. So, and thanks to Frank on the advice on some of that stuff. So, wow, that took a long time. It feels like it took a long time. On the other hand, man, I got plenty to do. I'm not dying for lack of games here. So if this is why when the news came down that Winter's Victory wasn't probably going to be out till January, and I'm smelling late January to be completely honest. I was like, yeah, that's fine, whatever. If it shows up whenever. We are not taking a break from the whiskey this evening. This is Basil Hayden's though, so I don't like it that much. So there's that. So yeah, thumbs up the video. Thank you, Perfidious Albion. Thumbs up the video if you've not done so already. I bought in the sales. I did buy some stuff near or adjacent to this sales season, but the only thing I bought from GMT was some empty boxes. I didn't buy anything from MMP. I did look. I didn't buy anything from Compass, but that's bogus because I went to Compass Expo and bought some stuff. So I bought it in the sales season. I just didn't buy it up through the flyer. This is possible. I'm a little surprised that I haven't seen this off the top of my head. I have not played this, but I do have it. This is so this was either GDW's Spain and Portugal module or GRD's For Whom the Bell Tolls module, and that's the one I have. Vanilla porter can be super tasty, actually. I got it. Like I said, I can't. If I fall behind on the chat, I'll get to it. I might not get to it instantly. I have seen Marco's gaming shed, and it's nice. Marco did a video or two on it. It is Molotov Cockatiel Games. It is actually Great Battles of Julius Caesar Deluxe. Contains a War Galley scenario or two that originally appeared in Caesar Conquest of Gaul. I don't think so. Cataphract contains a strategic game, Justinian, that can be used to sort of run a campaign of the tactical stuff, I think. Um, we're spinning to the bottom here. Stuka Joe's got an amazing game room too, but it's a huge. I mean, at least on camera, it looks like an enormous space. So, MMP. I've mentioned this at least 200 times, but MMP ships pre-orders in the order that they were received. So if you got your order in early, it goes early. If you got your order in late, it goes late. I have absolutely zero problem with that, by the way. All right, very good. All right, so now on the one hand, games are meant to be played, right? I'm not going to buy $1,000 bottle of whiskey and then let it sit on the shelf and not drink it. I'm probably just not going to buy the $1,000 bottle of whiskey. But it's meant to be drunk, and games are meant to be played. So I do think there's value in playing them. But on the other hand, as Mark says, if there's somebody that what they really enjoy is just collecting, cool. Um, and I suspect that is more important a factor than a lot of us would like to admit. I think it's more of a factor for me than I would like to admit, frankly. Or I wouldn't have 500 games; I'd have more like 200. I've got a lot of, even aside from series, which I have a lot of series stuff, I've got a lot of loose stuff too, right? What particularly irks me is when there are multiple games in a series and the different games are in different kinds of packaging. That annoys me. Villains in this regard, I'll cut SPI some slack, but villains in this regard include MMP in their Grand Tactical series, Clash of Arms in their campaign. What's that system called? American Civil War Campaign Series, something like that. The John Prado Civil War Operational Series. Though some of them are in flats, some of them are in bookcase boxes. It's super annoying. The Labatai stuff are mostly in flats. There's at least a couple other examples where they've used mixed packaging, and that annoys me very much. So now, see, this doesn't bother me at all. I have every intention of punch and clipping and playing Napoleon's Last Battles at some point because I need to refresh myself on the original version after having played the Library of Napoleonic Battles. So, well, yeah, I mean, this is what it comes down to. If you and it harm none, right? I mean, I don't care whatever somebody's getting their jollies off of just having a whole room full of games that they just stare at. That's cool. Ultimately, I do want to play the games I have. Sometimes that does end up being I thought I wanted to play this game and it ends up getting dumped at a later time. And then hopefully I don't change my mind on that and end up needing to buy it again. That's what irritates me. So now this whole study idea is something that I was a supporter of for RPGs, and I never really applied this logic to war games until relatively recently. In other words, there were like RPG things that I had that I wasn't getting rid of be, uh, because I really wanted them for use as a reference or inspiration or whatever. And I now have a decent amount of war games like that too. I've picked almost everything I've picked, frankly, everything I've picked up from 3W falls into that category. Um, some of the stuff I've picked up from Clash of Arms falls into that category. Like Edelweiss. I really kind of want to noodle with that system. Be nice, be nice if I could get the time to do it. Daniel O'Rourke says, you guys def go overboard. No kidding. Being overly excited about the newest course on Pocket Game. By newest course on Pocket game. Um, what game are we talking about? Actually, um, because there are a bunch. I feel like my buddy unboxing of Course on Pocket 2 was pretty neutral overall. Um, and to the point where some people complained about it. Not to my face, of course, because sissies don't do that. But there were people that complained about it. So Hardcore Circle was us for casualties. There's no well, we gave up. We were playing water. We're not done yet. We played up part of Waterloo to kind of practice. There were not a lot of actual like counter losses or step losses. There might have been four as far as we got, and we got about eight, I don't know, 8 turns in, something like that. Before we said we've practiced enough, we're going to set the campaign up. I would it's the granularity of the casualties system in that is so low that it's hard to draw any conclusions in that regard. You will see, however, that there's a lot of retreats caused on the CRT, and a lot of people don't like that. They want a bloodier CRT. I maintain that I think that CRT does make sense in aggregate over the course of the entire game, presuming the game is at least one of the decent sized ones, say, Linear Waterloo. Or if you extend that to Napoleon's, Library of Napoleonic Battles, which all this applies to as well. Although that's a somewhat more nuanced system. It's got a number of other things like artillery and things like that that can affect those things, and vedettes and things like that don't directly affect losses necessarily, but they can affect some other things, like retreat availability and stuff like that. So, um, nevertheless, that is the chief complaint that I've heard from a lot of people about that family of games, that lineage that runs from Napoleon's last battles into the Library of Napoleonic Battles, that the combat's not bloody enough. I think if you like step back and then look at the end and see what you have, I think it more or less makes sense. I was keeping track of a lot of my stuff on BGG, and I still kind of try to keep up with it. But my main thing of keeping track of what I've got is what I call the database. It's an Excel spreadsheet. It's not a real database. I could build it as a real database, but I'd rather not. I'd rather not relearn how to build a database, to be honest. Tom MC says, if you want a nice study in how maps are crafted for their subject, consider Virgin Queen. It has some interesting distortions, and those distortions are on purpose. I would suspect that okay. I was about to say that every wargame map has intentional distortions on it. But and that's true, but they may not have been intentional distortions on the part of the cartographer that did the game map or the designer. They may have been distortions that were inherited from whatever map projection they used as a basis of that map. It doesn't look to me as though that can be said about Version Queen, which does have a very interesting map projection. Same deal with something like Pacific War, which really does have a map projection that kind of throws you off at first until you kind of get used to it, which doesn't take long. In my case, this always just turns into my personal what I'm hot on at that specific time. What am I hot on right now? Well, one of the things I've been hot on for a while has been World and Flames, but we got a game of that coming up. I've been hot to do some Napoleonic stuff, but we're doing that as soon as I can get back to it. I kind of want to do some more strategic level World War II stuff. In particular, I want to do the TSR, ETO, and PTO. And I think I might get that lined up for January. You will hear about that when it happens. So it's pretty much what I'm interested in. I mean, at this point, I wouldn't go so far as to say I have all major wargaming topics covered, but I have a lot of wargaming topics covered, and the ones that I don't have covered are generally the ones I'm not interested in. This is a weird question. Daniel McCord says, "Have I started to become more?" Is asking me. have I started to become more picky about the games I order? In other words, do you now know what you're seeking? So I want to say yes. I have absolutely become more selective, especially for upcoming stuff. I have, on the other hand, bought kind of a lot of older stuff over the last 6 months or so, just to kind of fill gaps, or in some cases it was just deals, right? If I can get a S and T unpunched SPI S and Ts for $10, I'm probably going to buy those. Unless they're, unless I already have them, or it's something I know I don't want. At this point, I have very close to all the SPI S&Ts that I want. There's a couple more I'm curious about, but that I don't need and will be happy to wait until I find them really cheap. Um, so I'd like to say yes, because I'm trying to stay more focused, especially on the series games where I don't have to necessarily relearn everything from scratch. Some games are, of course, worth that effort. But at the same time, like if I look at the number of games incoming in 2023 versus 2022, it's probably about the same, to be honest. Might have been a little more last year. Tim Zales has 450 games, very respectable. John C. I figured John C. might have. There was somebody mentioned on Facebook that supposedly has, I think the number was 24 or 26,000. That's just crazy. So, and this is a great example, actually. I don't know if this is what Wade Moore is referring to, but there's a couple more of the SPI quads, and probably a couple more of the soapboxes that I kind of want to have, right? To see, okay, so here's one that I need is Crimean War. Need is too strong a word, but would be nice to have to kind of check out the battles in the Crimean War, because I know nothing about those battles. And those, it's an easy to play system. It's probably not a rigorous historical model, but that's fine too. Mark, obviously, our best wishes are with you, so you can get that taken care of. Joe Faust also mentions bang for the buck. Lots of scenarios or maps. Chad's random scenario generator for Combat Commander. Remember, we had that for ASL as well. But it wasn't really random. It kind of was if you talk about the solitaire thing. But I mean, yeah, this anything that adds to replayability, right? Lots of scenarios. It could be one scenario that has just a lot of variability in it, right? Value is totally a factor that leads us to buy one thing or another. Mo from Mo's Game Table is here. We're only about 5 minutes behind the chat. That's not super duper bad. Ugh. No, thank you. No, thank you. Got plenty of that at work. This is kind of true too. Yeah. It'd be bloody on your own. I had to do a soak off attack on somebody, and I ended up annihilating my entire attacking stack. It was a bad attack, and it was a bad attack. Had I not rolled the worst possible result, I would have just probably retreated. The Blue and Gary quad. I particularly approve of this particular quad. A lot of people like these. Stigler will, I'm sure, probably has already mentioned that he thinks these are stinkers. And by Stigler's standards, he might be right, but a lot of people had a lot of fun with Blue and the Gray games. There's a reason why TSR reprinted not just one, but both of them, as I recall. Jeff Beeler mentions another criteria, which is Canadians. Is there really only one? That doesn't sound. That doesn't. Oh, in 1940. Yeah, okay, maybe that might make more sense. I had 1944 in my head there. At which point, that does not make any. When having one at that scale does not make any sense. 28 games with the Crimea. Wow, that's a lot. Oh, you have 28 total games with Crimea coming. I get it. I get it. I get it. I get it. John has dumped a bunch of stuff too. So I know that. I'm never going to be this person, okay, but I would love and have some degree of envy toward people who can have a selection of games that they really love and just play those and get really good at those and not have to buy every damn thing that comes out. I am envious of somebody in that situation. I do keep track of the magazine games because if I don't, I will buy them again. I was going through some of the Traveler stuff because I didn't have. I started rebuilding the database for Traveler stuff, and so I'm looking at the shelf and I'm like, why do I have 3 copies of Kakri Alien Module 2? I do not need 3 copies of this. This is the GDW one, not the later one. So, and I've done that. I've like went to the war zone, got the Traveler book home, and then went to put it on the shelf. And I'm like, fuck, I already had this. So it's a good idea to keep track of what you got. Now, if you got 15 games and then you just keep it all in your head, that's fine too. But I can't do that with 532 games. So I probably had at one point. So right here, you can't see it, and I'm not going to move the camera so you can see it. Right here is a 4x4 and a 4x2 Kallax, and then some more stuff on top, and that's all RPG stuff. And other than Traveler, that's all the RPG stuff. And I think I probably had another about 4x4 Kallax full of RPG stuff at one point. Um, at this point, as I've said many times, and I continue to break this rule, I'm only buying Traveler and RuneQuest at this point, and technically Call of Cthulhu, but I don't need more Call of Cthulhu. So if I could only have one historical game, I'd almost certainly pick World in Flames for this. I'm still probably that Axis Empires is a really nice package, that new Axis Empires. So if I could have only one, I might pick World in Flames. I might squeal. Oh, I was on a podcast where we asked this question, and I did a little bit of weaseling. But if we're just saying one game, I'm saying probably World in Flame. If we're saying one system and all the different volumes in the series are different scenario packs, then I'm probably saying OCS, just because it gives me so much, right? All right, the British are done. Let's pack the British and the Bulgarians up, and we have everything done out of this game except the markers at this point. So we're done clipping for the evening. I'm not going to try and bust out the additional quarter sheet of markers that's left at this point. There is a table tray of markers for Der Weltkrieg. Most says that we moved last year. He dumped a lot of games and cleared out everything except for Hex Encounter, and then even some of those got thinned out. I mean, sometimes you just have to do that, right? I never intend to move again, I got to tell you. So if that proves to be the case, then I'm not going to have to worry about it. They're going to bury me in this basement. So, this is true. I mean, they are, after all, lone Canuck. There's more than one of them, though. So, Canadian Crucible, I picked up a Ziploc copy as well. Looks good. Trying to catch up here. Bear with me. I don't have a lot. I've got a decent amount of books, but not like a crazy amount. I think if I compacted it all to maximum compactedness, I'd probably use one of these 4x4 Kallaxes, maybe a little more than that. And that's basically all the books. But I'm talking like double stack and maybe triple stack in the paperbacks and stuff like that. So I probably got a couple of hundred books. It's not that many. A lot of the stuff I buy for books now is in ebook format. Mike Welker says that Canadian Crucible is his favorite TCS game, which makes sense to me. It's nice looking, it's modern. Unlike some of the super duper old TCS games where they've redone the counters, they've completely redesigned the counters a couple of times now. If we're talking one box, man, I'm going to take Roads to Gettysburg 2. Just because I think there's the most value in that box, but certainly On to Richmond 2 is comparable. And I do kind of feel like On to Richmond 2 might be a better showcase for the system than the Bull Run, and either Bull Run campaign for that matter. So, but there's no weak GCACW game either. So that's another thing I need to play some more of. I haven't played it in like a year and a half. So if keeping one game from each theme or era. I'm not sure this helps very much. Because like I said, I'd want to do something like keep all the GCACW games so I can play out all those different operations. I haven't got a chance to watch Hexy's video on this actually. Um, I feel like to the degree that TCS is really, really interesting, and I do think it is largely the order system that makes it so. While we did fool around with TCS a month or two ago to just kind of learn the basics without using the orders, from like an ongoing play standpoint, if I was going to play a bigger, more serious TCS game, there's no way I'd play without the orders. No way I'd play without the orders. So, Nordic Maelstrom, thanks for stopping by. Excellent turnout tonight, folks. We do have, well, I can't see that, so it's irrelevant. So it's all good. Um, as Doug says, orders are the heart of TCS, or the TCS, as the folks over there might want to call it nowadays. But yeah, I mean, I feel like when I say that Dean's always got something interesting to say as a designer in TCS, where he is saying that is in the order system, and actually in the in Civil War Brigade series too. Whereas by the time we get to Line of Battle, I think Dean said what he needed to say, and there is an order system in there, which is similar to the one that was in Civil War Brigade and the Regimental Subseries, but not identical, and it's somewhat streamlined. I think Dean has other things to say in Line of Battle, but I think that command control element is really, really, really important. And as I've said a bunch of times, I really poop. I just screwed that up. I really strongly almost require there to be some kind of logistics or command and control or some kind of throttle on a game, some kind of command constraint or logistical constraint or whatever. That means that I can't just move and fire with shoot with everything. I don't like that. When you can just move and shoot with everything, I don't like that. Professor Albion mentions Le Grand Guerre. It is really hard to source. It does pop up at Noble Knight from time to time. I will say that it's usually around $300, which is really not that bad compared, considering how hard to get it is. It's really not that bad. If I go down to Chattanooga, Eric Goebel, I will definitely check this out. I feel like there can't be just two thumbs up. Maybe I'll have to check this. No, there's more than two. Okay, needed that water. All right. So Perry Spropolis really loves orders, or really overcome fog of war deficiencies in solo gaming. This is true too. Plus, it's almost like a role playing aspect, right? Where you are, um, where you're kind of writing orders maybe in a colorful way, and then you as the solitaire player are kind of sticking to those written orders. I really like that element as well. And you can add. I think you might be surprised at if you set like realistic, maybe you don't have a formal order system, but like have give the components of your army objectives, okay? And say, okay, that we're gonna hold the line here, we're gonna break through over here, and then this group of units is going to exploit. And then stick to those plans. And regardless of, as long as you could work the basic levers of the system, I think you're probably going to find that your play improves. At least if the game is well designed. I noticed that in Goss. So anyway, I did see 100+ thumbs. So thumbs up if you haven't yet. I assume that something's broken on YouTube again. Big shock. So anyway. All right. Thomas Bandy from Northeast Ohio. Thanks for stopping by. I feel like we said, I don't know, have we thoroughly explored the reasons why? What about some specific mechanic that you like? Like some people really like chit pull games, for example. Do you buy a game just because it's a chit pull game? I mean, I don't know that I've ever done that for chit. Have I ever done that? I'd say yes, actually. And the obvious example is Lee versus Grant, right? I don't first of all think that the signature important thing about chit pull games is the fact that you're pulling a chit, right? The interesting thing there is that you are randomizing activations somehow. The details all are going to differ. Brant, thanks for stopping by. There's a bunch of different ways you can do that. You can do that with a chip pull, right? As a number of games do. The Glory, the what's that damn Ted Racer thing? Clash of Giants system does this. Blind Swords does this. Just off the top of my head. GTS does this. But you can also randomize activations in a different way, like GCACW does, where you have it's an initiative. You roll, and whoever wins the initiative gets to do the next activation. Some people really hate that, by the way. I think it's almost magical the way it actually works in play. It's one of those things that even if you think it doesn't work, if you haven't played with it, don't write it off quite yet. Another way to handle that might be the BCS thing, where you don't have a random like activation as such, but the degree to which your activation is successful is randomized. And if you you get a bad roll, you get a bad roll. So I'm not sure what we're referring to here, I think. What was the first chit pull game? This was Panzer Command, Eric Lee Smith Victory Games. Um, I want to say predated tank Eastern Front and Western Front Tank Leader. Although I'm reasonably sure we're talking about Panzer Command. Let me put it that way. I'd have to actually look about Tank Leader. And that kind of interesting that sort of interesting constraint on command or ability to move or activate or fight with or whatever might be something that would get me to buy a game. That's probably what initially drew me to BCS, was the fact that it's in there, right? Panzer Command is a game that I think doesn't work as well as it should, and that's not the fault of the mechanics. I do think West Front turns out to have been the better choice for that system than East Front. Panzer Command is East Front. So, yep, well, Eric Lee Smith says so, and I'm going to take his word for it. So let me put it that way. The idea may have occurred first in miniatures, but as far as I'm aware, unless somebody wants to give me a counterexample from elsewhere, the first chit pull board war game is Panzer Command, and that is an Eric Lee Smith game. So, honestly, a little bit hard to find a designer with more impact than, not impossible. I mean, there's people, but I mean, I would say if we were to rate designers at like low impact, medium impact, high impact, very high impact, Eric Lee Smith is a very high impact designer. All right, Panzer Command is 1984. Tank Leader 1986. Now those are credits for BGG on Eastern Front Tank Leader are Eric Goldberg, Guy Hall, and John Hill. And I want to say there were 3 games in this series. Is that right? Was there Desert Steel was the Middle Eastern one. I really like the chit pull. No, so the system in GTS is very, at least the chit pull part of it. I'm not sure about the combat resolution. The chit pull part of that GTS system is straight out of Panzer Command. It is very similar. Yeah, we just looked that up. You're absolutely right. By 2 or 3 years. We haven't had. I have had Erkley Smith on, and I should try and run his email down again, probably. So chocolate chip pull right out of the bag. I could understand that. I could use some chocolate chip cookies right now. I gotta tell you. Well, he was out of. Remember, Erkley Smith was out of board war games for a long time too. So glad to see him back. Let me put it that way. Always happy to see one of these legendary designers who's still around and is still able to contribute come back. And we have seen a fair amount of that in recent years, and I think that's good. We've seen the return of Joe Belkowski. Joe's got all kind of other stuff going on, so I understand why he was doing other stuff. We've seen Erkley Smith come back. Mark Herman never left. I had another name in my head. Just said Richard Berg never left, but Richard Berg is no longer with us. Yeah, I think this is it. I think that the tuning that was done to adapt this to GTS and put it on the West Front is part of that. I think I think made this work better. I haven't played across the Narva. There are chip pull Battle of the Bulge games. So the what's it called? The Deadly Woods, the Ted Racer game from a couple years ago. John Butterfield. Well, yeah, he was working for Apple, as I recall. Probably making just wheelbarrows full of money, I would think. Daniel McCord says he prefers rolling dice to determine initiative over a chit pull system. I'm going to agree with this for what might sound like a weird reason. And if you've played GTS on a copy that's been played a couple times, you will recognize that those activation chits, the chits you are physically putting in the cup and pulling them out, get beat to hell. So I feel like if I were going to do a game like that, that I would either do it as a dice roll, or if that didn't work for whatever reason, I would use cards. I think cards are easier to handle than chits. And really, the only reason we still use chits is because there's already chits in the box. And SPI did it that way, right? No, it is not. Same basic theme. This is the CSS game, the Adam Starkweather Company Scale series. There's a name for the modern stuff, the modern hypothetical sub-series. So it's not based on S&T's Brilliant 85. I mean, same basic idea, but it's but same basic topic. Let me put it that way. Mechanically, totally different. Totally different. All right. I cannot say anything about World at War 85. That is not a thing that I paid any attention to at all. Jeff Bueller says Mongoose is redoing Fifth Frontier War. So has anyone heard if the related board game is being redone? I have not. I keep my ear fairly close to the ground on this, and I was. I mean, it's this. This is a thing that they've been cooking for at least several years, and they keep saying, and we're supposedly going to see it in 2024. I'd be quite surprised if they redid the Fifth Frontier board game. Let me put it that way. I'd be happy, but I'd be surprised. Mark G says you can put your chits in coin protectors. This is true. I think that's a pain in the ass. It's just as easy to make cards and stick them in sleeves with blank backs on them. Yeah, but I don't know that I want to subject Mark to Dan. Mark is just such a nice guy that I don't know that I want him to deal with Dan. And Mark's Mark's been out of war games largely for a while too, right? He's still pretty heavily involved in the RPG side of the hobby though. So if I'm gonna do this, I've got card sleeves. I'll just make cards, right? I can make cards. That's not a big deal. So But yeah, I mean, I would whatever. Yeah, if they want to redo Belter or Imperium or whatever, I'll be happy to do whatever they buy whatever they'd like to put out. I've been a bit behind on the Mongoose Traveler stuff just because of priorities and things like that. But I have everything I want for what I want to do, which I'm not prepared to talk about yet. Mark's involved. Mo mentions Belter's being redone by Compass. Yeah, I think the really good pick in among the GDW sci-fi board games is probably Imperium. But yeah, Compass is working on Belter, and I'll be happy to buy this too. Yeah, don't get me wrong. I like Belter a lot. It's kind of got this noodly economic thing going on that I always really like, especially if it's sci-fi. So I will be happy to grab this. No problem. I've played the Avalanche one, and while it has many mistakes and design mistakes, I don't think it's a fundamental disaster. I just think it's just not well done, right? The things they added to it didn't add as much as they wanted. But that wasn't that like adding some of that stuff wasn't new. Some of that stuff was stuff that had popped up over the years. So I mean, again, I'll buy Fifth Frontier War. I'm very much looking forward to the Fifth Frontier War line of products from Mongoose. So mining in Elite is crappier. I guess Elite Dangerous is crappier than mining in Eve Online, and that's saying something. Well, so that is one of the sort of issues with Fifth Frontier War, the old game, is it doesn't really seem to play out the way it seems like it's a tough ask to get it to play out the way the stuff narratively played out in the game history, in the meta history of the game. So now the original Elite was a different story. I think at one point, and this might be true, or I might be nuts, or I might be thinking of like Daggerfall or something where you could relatively recently, you could get like the original classic version of the game. And that might have been Elite. Now that I'm thinking about it, it might have been Daggerfall. I'm not sure. There's like a big project to remaster Daggerfall, by the way, in the Unity engine. And Unity shat the bed too, by the way. So all right. So what are there other things that will cause you to buy a game? I mean, maybe it's the cover, right? I don't know if I've ever bought a game because of the cover. There had to been something else going on that made it appealing to me. But certainly the cover art is maybe what catches your attention first, right? There have been some really remarkable covers in the history of wargaming. Roger McGowan has a pile of them. Back particularly from the 70s and the 80s. The um I'm trying to think of there isn't one. There isn't a war game cover artist with the same stature as Roger. There just isn't. Oh yeah. So remember this. I'm not I'm not pulling this up. I felt like my voice was fully recovered, but now that I've talked for an hour and 40 minutes, it's feeling slightly less recovered. So, well, we'll be doing that too. We're going to do Rune Quest and then Call of Cthulhu, and then I just think it will be good practice. And it's not going to be like a 10 sessions. It's going to be two or four sessions or something like that. Um, and then we'll move hopefully into Traveler from there. That's the idea. Flat Top's got a great cover. But certainly we're talking about the Avalon Hill flat top and not the Battle Line flat top. The Battle Line flat top has a number of things to recommend it physically, but the box art is not one of them. So, the recent GC, I can't remember the dude's name now. Somebody will know it in the chat. There's a really well known and living and still active Civil War battle artist and that's who does the last few covers of the GCACW games for MMP. And makes a big difference having art that high quality. I forget the guy's name. What April? I mean, I think it's a pretty good cover. But what I will say is, I don't know how well you're picking up the fact that it says Bloody April here on camera, but on my monitor, I can barely friggin' see that it says Bloody April here. So I would call that a significant contrast issue. But it's what looks like a painting or something like that. It is a nice cover. It's just got a contrast problem. That's all. So the graphic design of it is, other than that, pretty good. And there's been some fading in the 45 years since it came out too. Yeah, about 45 years. That's approximately correct. Yeah, almost totally invisible. Now, on the other hand, we can look at the direct predecessor, right, where very intelligently, almost exactly the same sort of rust color here on the bottom of the box, but you have the title in a contrasting white instead. That works way better. Also, I think if we're just talking about titles, I think this is the best war game title of all time. That's my personal opinion at the moment. Somewhat terrifyingly, it occurred to me that I have 8 SPI soapbox games. That's kind of a lot. That's almost half of all of them. Um, yeah, not crazy about that. I mean, imagine seeing it in a store and you just look at it from across the room and it's just like, bleh, you can't tell what the hell it is. So, not desirable. Not desirable. 1944 Battle of the Bulge. Um, so I don't own either of these games, and while I could sort of picture either of them in my head, um, neither of them really seem really punchy to me. What seems more punchy is Road to the Rhine, the old GDW game. Art's probably not as good, I guess, but I feel like it's a punchier cover. CNA's on my list. It's just one of those things that I may or may never actually get because of what it costs. So good and bad game titles, maybe, maybe. Those Panzer Blitz, Panzer Leader, Squad Leader, all the whole series. Those are absolutely iconic covers. I think that'd be the case even if the games themselves did not sell as well as they did. Keith Rocco, that's the guy. That's the guy. Yeah, that guy's good. So no, if Stigler says Bloody April, I'm assuming he means the SPI Richard Berg game. So that Anzio 4th edition cover. If you picture in your head the Anzio cover and it's a black cover, that's the 4th edition cover. If you picture the version with like a landing vehicle on it, that's an earlier edition. And I think the one with Mussolini on it was the 3rd edition. The black one with sort of the framed look that similar to what we saw with Russian campaign, that is the hands down best cover of for Anzio. It's not close. Ugh. I think this can be done either way. I think this can be done well either way. But you can't just put some moron in charge of Photoshop and ask him to, like, if you had me doing it, for example, I would half-ass it and it would look terrible. So so no thanks. Operation Husky is punchy. You got to admit. You got to admit. Now, I also I'd pull one of these down if I had them in this room. I did, but there's too many of them now and I can't. I did like the GDW Europa boxes, but the later Europa boxes with sort of that grid, and there'd be like one of the countries on that map of Europe on the cover would be highlighted. And that's where the game took place. I really liked those covers. Third Reich is a classic cover too. That's a great cover. Uh this might be worst iconic cover is Army Group Center. Is this Barbarossa Army Group Center or the Army Group Center that was done by 3W, and which is I believe a game by a Japanese designer, and a game which actually looks quite interesting, I might add, but not a great cover. Paulson says this is actually a very interesting way to look at it, and it's not like we haven't mentioned this before. A price I'm willing to pay or less. Um, you'd be appalled at the games, the shitty games I will buy if they are like $5 or $10. Okay. It's very easy to get me up to buy a shit biscuit if the price is low enough. If it's something like, I don't want to use that as an example because I think that's, I was actually going to say Airbridge to Victory, but that's not that bad of a game. It's just primitive by GMT standards because it was one of their first games. If we say Notorious Dog, Scrimmage, although there's people that like Scrimmage, if I saw Scrimmage for $5, yeah, I'd absolutely buy that. If I saw what's the dumbest looking Avalon Hill war game I could think of off the top of my head, um, hard to say for their war games. I mean, certainly they did stuff like the World of Spices that probably, that actually doesn't look that bad. But there's a bunch of those non-war games that they did that I have zero interest in, and I could absolutely just not buy them, even if they were inexpensive. I think the Panzer Blitz cover still holds up extremely well. Let me put it that way. I will sometimes do this too, only because I don't want to pay the new and shrink price, and in principle, I'm buying it because I want to play it or at least look at it. So I don't need it to be in absolutely pristine condition. I'm not gonna, uh, I'm gonna take the shrink wrap off. If you get the chance to go to Noble Knight, go in that junk room. There's a lot of stuff in there. So I guess Abraxas MF's talking about the Barbarossa Army Group Center. Maybe I'm misremembering it, but I didn't think it was that bad. Jeff Beeler says he likes games that have extensive designer's notes and have background information. I also like this. Boy, you're going to love Last Gamble. It's got a whole book of this stuff. Other games that really shine here are the GCACW games, which all have the game as history in the back. Some of the coin games have really excellent designers' notes and histories and historical notes and stuff like that. A lot of Dean Essig games. I've praised Last Chance or Victory specifically very highly for that particular reason. I actually think Plot to Assassinate Hitler it's one of those SPI things that was like way ahead of its time. It obviously wouldn't be designed that way now. Just check out Black Orchestra, but the I think there's some interesting things going on in that game. Now, whether it works is a bit of a different story. Fresno Games Association, a legendary publisher that produced nothing but crap. To the best of my knowledge, if somebody wants to argue with me that no, there's this actual hidden gem that Fresno did, then by all means. But I'm at this point, I'm saying everything they did was crap. I would pick up for a sufficiently low price. I would pick up the Eagle in the Sun because it's basically their version of War in the Pacific, and I think you could turn it into a good game. You just have to design a game based on the components that are in the bag, and all their not all their stuff. They did do some stuff that was boxed, but I've never seen Eagle in the Sun box. As far as I'm aware, it was only in a Ziploc that I've ever seen. The GW Operation Crusader is a very interesting looking game. That's coming back out from Compass 2, but that's going to be a substantial redesign. Now, I've had lots of negative things to say about Avalon Hill Stalingrad, but if I saw it for $2 and it wasn't completely destroyed, I'd probably buy it for $2. I mean, hell, I might sell it, but I would buy it. So, Phil Hatfield, thanks for stopping by. Speaking of GCACW troublemakers, Phil is the guy that sold me on a GCACW. Yeah, it's going to be really something else. There's literally an entire book that's just as big as the rule book and playbook, just of historical notes. Phase Line Smash was one of those things. This brings us back to our conversation about covers. I really strongly feel that GDW had really fallen off the wagon when late GDW period came around. Remember, they were still doing war games relatively late in their history. And although I've heard a lot of good things about Phase Line Smash, actually, the covers that they were doing at that time were just really eye wrenching. Really didn't like that. Enemy at the Gates. We're talking about the OCS Enemy at the Gates. Yeah, yeah, it's a good one. Well, that's a great question, Jeff Beeler. You should read the designer's notes about that. PLS. Panzer's Last Stand? Well, you're gonna if that's the game we're talking about, then you're going to align closely with Stigler on the fact that he hates the gamer's standard map style, which has kind of become the standard map style. Dan Noodles man is here. Dan, thanks for stopping by for once. It's not the first time he's been here. Dan, get me the 20-second clip that I keep asking for this week's show. Jeremy White on this week's Thursday show, 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. Getting a little out of gas, but we can make it another 8 minutes here. I don't the late period game. I shouldn't say late period. There's kind of two different. Although Dean is not necessarily the map artist on every game, there's kind of two different gamers house style maps. There's what I'll call the light look and the dark look. And generally speaking, although the light look maps are idiosyncratic, as has been pointed out on any number of occasions, with the differently colored lines and the weird hex notations and all that stuff, they're idiosyncratic, but you get used to that inside a half an hour. And those maps have never genuinely bothered me. But the high color maps, like we saw in a lot of the old Civil War Brigade series games, some of the old TCS games, man, those are hard to take. Those are really hard to take. So, all right. Yeah. So that's what I meant. I talked to Danny about this. The counter colors match the actual colors that they saw on the battlefield at the time. And that may have been wear and tear on the uniforms. I don't know. That may be a Carl question. But the brown actually does make sense. So, and I didn't have any problem telling the British from the Americans. Let me put it that way. It's untraditional, though. I mean, normally when we have Americans in a game, we get some variation, unless it's a naval game, then maybe not. But we get some variation on U.S. Army green, for example, usually. Yeah, it's unconventional, right? I mean, we almost always see that green. But you get these guys are out in the field long enough, then it's brown. I don't care what color it was when it came off out of the factory. So I honestly, I could probably, and we're going to get to another design update at some point here before too much longer. And maybe we'll talk about counters at that time, because I have thoughts on counter design and counter size and contrast and friendliness to people who are colorblind in various ways, right? I mean, there's no lift involved well, there is some lift, I suppose, but just asking you to think about it, right? Make your game to exclude as few people as possible. If somebody's colorblind and can't tell the difference between red and green, then maybe you got a problem. So just think about contrast, right? As more of a determining factor to identify the valuable information on the counters as color. All right. So Marty says if he has a quibble, it's that they base U.S. counters on uniforms, but SS uniforms are black because the wearaboos love that shit. That's just that's just traditional though. I mean, it's weird, don't get me wrong. And I don't really see any reason for it when in the same game series we might not see US Marines having their own color, or Soviet Guards having their own color, or Royal Commandos having their own. I mean, we don't see that. It tends to only happen with the SS, and that's kind of why it's weird. So this is absolutely, it depends on the country, but on the French, yes, it's very hard to tell. That there's a black stripe on the or a dark stripe on the counter to tell you that it's the reduced strength side. And on those very dark blue French counters, it's very difficult to see. It's not as bad with some of the other nationalities. So if we haven't heard, and I haven't mentioned it, and I think I have, Compass Games has picked up some kind of deal to grab to redo the remaining Command magazine games. I'll point out that several of those games have been redone already. A couple by Compass, and a few by GMT. Specifically, the Ted Racer ones have been redone by GMT. And maybe there's ones that I'm not thinking of off the top of my head, but the ones that Ted redid originally in Command and then redid with GMT are all really good games. That's 1914 Glory's End and When Eagles Fight, which is a 2-pack. There's 1918 Storm in the Storm in the East, West, East. I forget where the storm was. And there's Great War, the Great War in Europe, which is really kind of an underappreciated gem that was redone in a dual pack. That and its companion game, Great War in the Near East. Now, I played that out of the old Command Magazine edition, and the GMT version is better, flatly better. This is true sometimes, yeah, but not usually. A lot of times they don't. That we've seen, I think we've seen more of that in recent years, actually. So, U.S. Marines are about, I think, a better example because I mean, a guards unit is just kind of a unit that did well. So the Soviets just said, "Well, you are a guards unit now, comrades. Thank you." Um, no, no. Um, but that's not the distinction, is it? Um, in any event. All right, so we're 2 minutes till here, so let's talk about what's going on. There should be an unboxing video. I will remind everybody that I am going to take the week of Christmas off. That is December 25th through the 29th. I am doing nothing or as close to as possible to nothing as I can do that week. So part of my mission here is to get some posted videos done for that week, so there'll be video content, but we're not going to have live shows that week. I'm just going to take that week off. I could use the week off because I don't take vacations. I go to game conventions, and then I have to come back to work to recover from the vacation. That's the plan. I mean, it's going to turn into something, right? But that's the plan. But I want to be able to like completely disconnect from work and from channel stuff for that week because I just don't take that time off. But the we've got to get that done over this week and next week, and then we have so this week there should be an unboxing video on Thursday. Thursday evening, if we have the show with Dan, with Jerry / Jeremy / whatever his name is, White, who did Atlantic Chase and who did a fabulous job. We're going to talk about presenting Wargame. And I don't know what else. There might be some. I want to get an RPG thing done. in preparation for that week off, and I also want to get the Frederick the Great video done for the week off. So hopefully I can get that done, and that's got to happen next week. But I've also got a lot of other things going on. So anyway, all right, folks. So what was our final number here this evening? It looks like 169, which is outstanding. If you have not yet subscribed to the channel, please do so. Please thumbs up the video if you have not already done so. If you'd like to help support the channel, there's a bunch of ways to do that linked in the video description. Check those things out. Best way is the Patreon. Patrons will get miscellaneous perks as they arise. I don't want to limit any content to patrons only, though. So I feel like that's a no-no. I want people to, I like people seeing the stuff. So we're not doing that, but the support is much appreciated. So I really appreciate everybody that's coming out every week to hear me blabber. Remember that you are supporting the show just by being here and participating in the conversation, the community, and that is much appreciated by itself. Dennis Spores, thanks for stopping by. I will check the email, and then I will have a chat with the Buckeye Game Fest folks. Pretty sure they'll be delighted to see you again. Let me put it that way. So, Dennis, thanks. All right, so folks, that is it. We're going to play the outro here. So thanks to the patrons of the channel, without whose support we would not be able to continue doing this. So everybody have a great week. We will see you all on Thursday with Dan and Jeremy White. And next week we'll be back with the final, is that right? Yep, final pre-Christmas counterclipping show. And then we'll be back after Christmas. I will do a show on January 1st. I have no problem with that. So everybody have a great night. We'll see you all again soon.